my friends, welcome back to the channel. Today I am making yet another Christmas village, this time in the snowy Ranch Highlands of the new Wishblossom Ranch DLC. As it is now officially December, I want to bring a new festive design for you all to enjoy this holiday season. This build is not only decorative but also spacious for the Wishblossom horses to run around, making this design both aesthetic and functional. If you would like to see how this was made, keep on watching. So I was really inspired by those paintings I used to see all the time of these really big Christmas villages with a huge ice skating rink in the center. So this build today is a perspective build, since we are going to rely on shaping the area with tall buildings to give an illusion of a bigger village. For this to work, I used the Corona castles, and I actually made my main house one of them just so that we can have two to work with. Now we need tall buildings, but we are kind of limited since surprisingly a lot of buildings fall too short. Originally, I tried using just the new Alpine modular buildings, but it didn't have a whole lot of windows that lit up. So to keep up the illusion, I use a mix of Disney park entrances with the new entry pieces of the GULCH modular kit. Surprisingly, I liked how it looked blending all of these tall pieces together. Of course, then I go and add some taller alpine buildings so that it still feels like a village. This part took a ton of time because I psyched myself out into thinking that the GULCH pieces looked kinda dumb in a snow biome, but I started to like it once it came together. Fair warning, I did struggle deciding what I exactly wanted for this build, so due to that you will see me place things down that aren't exactly definitive, so they will move around often, but I tried to keep the vision consistent throughout. I do also use this snowy festive house because I think it just looked nice here, and it's nice to introduce some varying buildings. Now to make it all look fuller, I used the white blossom trees and I put them selectively behind some buildings. Keep in mind that I am paying attention to all of the entry and exit areas and making sure that you can access every single rock node and entrance to the Silver Summit, so I will be sure to include those in my walkthrough later. The key here to make the illusion of a big Christmas village is layering. So since we have our taller buildings set, I put the shorter structures in the forefront, and so I placed down a couple of these festive market stands throughout. On to the actual feature of the build, I want to make an ice skating rink in the center using the new Frozen River kit. The reason it is shaped this way is because I want the build to be functional and have a snowy path large enough to run around in my horse, and I am using the angles of the placed buildings to guide my ice rink. The best way I do this is by creating an outline with the path first, as I am doing right now. Once I have an outline, I start first with the largest pieces and make the corners touch the edges of the path outline. The goal is to just fill in the space as much as possible. So once I put down as many large pieces as I can, I switch to the medium-sized ones before filling in whatever gaps with the smallest ones. I will be rearranging these pieces later on, but this is simply to create the ice rink first. And it's okay if some pieces go a little bit over the path outline, as I am not being too strict with it fitting, it is just a guideline for the overall shape. I forgot to record me putting the fences, so just wrap around the ice rink with your fencing of choice. I used a snowy one from the Wishblossom Ranch, but I do replace it later with a snowy log fence. Now I simply refuse to believe that you cannot put many objects on ice, so we are going to be doing a little bit of trickery, if you will. I originally put a Christmas tree in the center, but I changed it out later for a carousel because I already have a Christmas village video similar to this with the tree centerpiece. But for now, I put the tree in the middle and I close it in with some of the ice pieces. Now same with the tree, I go area by area and I take out some ice squares, filling them in with some smaller pieces and leaving a couple of blank single grid pockets. I do this to put the snowman on top of the ice since you can't technically do that already, so some of these pockets accommodate for 2 or 3 snowmen and others are single grids for 1 snowman. I scatter about some of these festive bushes, which are unfortunately broken, but I think they just have to be in every Christmas build that I do. I put them mostly on the sides of the festive stands, and I also changed the well skin to the new one and have it up against the Corona castle. So I didn't add buildings towards the entrance, but I did decide to do it anyway because I wanted the area to feel a bit more closed off as if you were inside of a snow globe. But you'll notice that in the entrance area we have smaller buildings, whereas the further down you go you'll reach the taller buildings, and that, my friends, is by design. I'm going to add a couple more blossom trees here and there, and starting to put down some snowy alpine trees and my favorite lit up snowy trees. These festive lights star banners are really nice for festive builds, and there weren't really many options of where to put them exactly, so I chose a couple places where it might fit nicely, especially by the entrance of the biome. And a part of the same set, I used the festive light arches in some areas as well. I felt that there needed to be more trees, so I included the Frosted Heights snowy pine trees since they can also get tall enough to fill in the gaps in the sky. My least favorite part of this was pathing, so all I am doing here is keeping the shape of the build in mind and putting down some snowy Frosted Heights pathing underneath the buildings. The whole idea is that I'm confining a bulk of my clutter decorating on the sidewalks, but keeping a natural snowy path next to it for accessibility. I do a lot of diagonal turns with the pathing, and to be honest, diagonal pathing might just be my one weakness, but I will make it work with the overall design. When I do finish covering the buildings with the path, I carve out some entrances by the ponds and towards the silver summit just so that you can tell that it's a way out instead of keeping it 100% confined. I crafted these alpine lights and I placed them throughout the build for some strong hazy lighting. I can almost feel when something is not balanced enough, and so I swap out that alpine corner building with a taller one. And as I mentioned before, just carving out some of that pathing just to reach the ponds. I used some more festive lights in a few places just to make it all a little bit more holiday themed. And like I mentioned before, I swapped the fencing with this snowy log one instead. I think the previous one was a little bit too skinny for my liking, but please feel free to use whichever one you want. I am starting to add some more smaller decorations, and one of my favorite ones are these deer lights because I think they just look really pretty and bring that Christmas vibe. Going back to the ice rink, I am indeed swapping the Christmas tree for the Nightmare Before Christmas carousel. I think it wasn't just because I had done a centerpiece tree before, but also because I wanted the area to feel a little more alive, and that happens when you add more animated objects. So since this one actually moves, I felt it was better to have it in the center. But since we took out that Christmas tree, the place started to feel a little less festive, so naturally I am going to add multiple of the smaller craftable Christmas trees, and this was when I really started to trust the process. I'm going to pivot really quickly to the back area, so this is behind the first Corona Castle going into Silver Summit, and I didn't want this area to be too empty, you know? So we're just making a simple stop area with some lights, a fountain, and a hot chocolate stand, kind of like you're at the edge of town. This was a cute detail, but in the entrance area, I put the ice skates shelves inside, and it's kind of like where you get your skates before you enter the ice rink. This area between two festive stands was definitely giving food court, so I put some rugs and some picnic tables. Right next to that, I used the front of this house, which I don't think I mentioned this, but this is the Mistake Deluxe house that we got, but you can use any house that you want. And I turn it into a Santa meet and greet area with a Christmassy chair, presents, and of course, Santa's sleigh. I am still keeping the snowy path clean and wide open, but it was just a bit too empty, so I found that adding hot chocolate stands on 3 sides of the ice rink helped it a little. What also helped was putting some floating candles spread out over the snowy path. Along with the candles, I also put some fireflies, but only where the snowy brick is. From here on out, it's just finishing touches, so I use a couple Nightmare Before Christmas items, and I even found out that you can put snowy clouds on top of the ice, the ones that come from Olaf's Quests, just to make sure, not the new ones that you can buy in the shop. And then of course, I put down a couple chairs and tables, and then you are done. hope you enjoyed the speed build and walkthrough. I feel as though I've poured my emotions and feelings towards Christmas into this one build, and I'm happy that it looks like I've entered a painting. Forced perspective builds can be a lot of fun, and I hope you've learned a thing or two from my process in making this one. If you liked the video, be sure to like, subscribe, and I will see you all next time. Bye!